Hey, everyone. Yeah, we'll give people a couple of minutes to join in. We should. I know we won't get VinCat today, but we should get Prasoon and Oren. All right, so we've got 6 of 9, which is enough for quorum. But again, I'll wait just a couple more minutes. Now we're 7. All right, so I think we have enough to get started. All right. Welcome to the meeting. I've done the attendance so far, and the agenda's here. I'm going to do just a quick review. I just showed 3 slides to the OPI board on Monday morning. I'll show you what I showed just so you're all aware and in sync. I don't have any other announcements, and the main thing I want to do is review the lab proposals and discuss the lab. We need to be ready to present to the board at the meeting in February. So it'll be the first Monday in February, I believe, is when it's scheduled. And any other, and then if we have time, we can talk about kind of overall architecture document and networking architecture, and really what is our scope for networking, because networking in and of itself is a huge topic, and it's come up in the API group, but we should discuss it here as well as to the overall scope for networking. Any other topics or points? All right. So with that, I will stop sharing this. Share this. There. All right. So this was the general update. Nothing surprising. Just a kind of a status of what we're doing. And I don't think, I mean, this is just to give you guys a quick overview. Any questions on this slide? And then this one was a kind of the main things we're worried about. So lab overview, lab bomb is one of the main things. I gave them update on what we've decided about IPDK using OPI storage APIs that we agreed to. And then again, the overall architecture and context, and in particular, so you can do integration of server storage and networking in seamless pipelines. And then I've told them the developer engagement is improving, and you know that's true. And then finally, we discussed kind of what's actually been going on, what the overall work has been, and so I organized the display of that this way to kind of show the structure and organization of the GitHub, and you know the boundaries of the different groups and so on. And this slide went over well. It's you know, I was presenting the information in a different way that was starting to become a little hard to parse, and so I switched to this representation of the information. And as I said, this went over well. Any questions on any of the TSC update to the board? Excellent. All right, so let's start with the lab stuff.
Sure, I can start sharing.
Yep.
Perfect. Should we start with a BOM or with a requirements and goals?
Let's start with the requirements and goals and then do the BOM.
Okay, so we have the requirements and goals. We met before the holidays and we talked about it. There was feedback about merging both in one file and making some changes and actually creating a phase zero. Phase zero being partitioning. And defining the partitioning for the lab, and that means that all the automated tests and lab will be one partition, and the manual will be the other, and will basically duplicate hardware, and people will not have access into the automation. That will be only who manages the CI pipeline will have access there, and the manual partition, people can have access and do all this, and they have different requirements in terms of scheduling and so on. So, and the other one was basically merging everything in one document. So I integrated all that feedback in here. I don't know if there are any other items you want to go over. Kind of, these are the changes from last meeting we had.
I think walk through. Stephen has his hand up, so go ahead, Stephen.
All right, can you hear me?
Hi, we can hear you now.
All right, thank you. I was just gonna say, you know, I like what I see in here. It's all pretty good. I think the main, for me at least, the main blocker here is that it doesn't meet the linter rules. So if we can get those addressed.
Yeah, that I will fix it. I saw it. Yes, that will be fixed.
All right, thank you.
Okay, so I think the thing to do here is, you know, walk through. Okay.
The main chapters.
Yeah, I was going to say walk through the main points, and let's see if we have any feedback.
Okay, so
the main points, and then we'll go to the bottom and look at the total scale of what we
Okay.
of what this would be. And then I want to have let's have a discussion about how we make a decision about to get to on the getting this hosted. So what are going to be our criteria for making the decision? And do we have any real choice, or is it really there's only one reasonable way to get this hosted? So let's take the topics in that order.
Okay, so the first one is the usage of the lab. And this, you will see a lot of feedback in the usage also from access, because kind of access decisions drove the usage structure here. So what we want to have, want to have automated tests and so on that will run, and we want to have manual access so people can go in there and use DPUs. So this is the usage, and we phase it out in multiple phases. We'll start with the CI initially, then we go into having some interoperability between vendors, and then moving into manual. And the decision is, in terms of access, to keep two different partitions, separated the automation from manual, so there is no interaction between them. It has a lot of advantages, keeping two partitions. I would say the big disadvantage is cost, because you have to duplicate some hardware. So this is on the usage.
Well, so what hardware would have to be duplicated? Because again, if I've got automated tests that are
you'll have to duplicate basically the servers and the DPUs, because if you have it, yes.
And so what I was going to say is, if I want to be able to run automated tests whenever, scheduling that would be problematic. So I think we would need the amount of hardware for both partitions in any case. So
yes, I mean, this is having partitions means duplicating the hardware. That's because the other option was not to partition and have it a time-based sharing between automation and manual, which was not duplicating the hardware, but then was creating a lot of other problems of, people updating some firmware, messing it up, automation not coming and being able to clean up, and bunch of other things, and security access. So that was the options that we voted against last time.
Okay, so that's exactly. So I prefer that approach myself. I don't. So Keith and Paul, and then Paul.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think one way to mitigate this cost of partitioning is that if the cost of doing the partitioning is a purely software configuration, you can dynamically configure it, right? So you gather some statistics, say, hey, this is how frequently automation will take, over some period of time. CI/CDs can take. This is how much resources manual use case takes. Then over time you can say, yeah, we can partition in a way that optimizes those workloads, right? And so you are still not duplicating hardware too much. I'm just throwing that out as an example.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead.
So just a question about timing. So is it phase 1 through 4? Are those the time in which we would purchase and install equipment? So we'd focus first on functional validation testing, and then after that's done, we'd move to interoperability, maybe with another round of budget spend, and then focus on manual?
That is correct.
Okay.
So we want to first bring, functional test and the CI/CD pipeline up to have that fully working. Once each DPU works in isolation, we move into interoperability. And then we start providing manual access and creating that partition for manual access. And finally, creating maybe like a certification lab or something.
Got it. And have you, is the budget spend bill of materials, is it broken out that way as well? what's going to be spent on phase 1, phase 2, 3, and 4, or is it is it a full spend in the bill of materials?
No, BOM, it's a draft and it covers this, the first one.
Thank you.
And I can add these phases in the BOM as well. The thing is with the BOM, when we get to it, I want a lot of feedback there. It's just a draft. It's not ready to be approved. So it's the first draft, first time we're discussing about it. So I didn't do all this.
Got it.
I'll do the work once I get the feedback.
Yeah, and timing of these phases? Do you
First,
guys
second, and so on, but we don't have start date or end date.
no, but just a rough timing, like is phase 1, 6 months, and phase 2, 6 months, and phase 3 is then another 6 months, or is it some other time, just rough guess as to the timing? And then Jan as a question. Is there a rough guess on the timing, or is that still being thought through based on the BOM and so on?
They are mostly about, from my experience, how fast the community is able to pull together this. I saw projects where one phase took more than a year, and projects that did it in a couple of weeks. So,
Okay, so
I wouldn't be able to estimate. It's up to how community reacts.
Okay,
And the interest.
How much effort we're willing to put into it. Okay, Jan, go ahead.
Yeah, it's not a question as much as just an observation. Reacting to the fact that there is potentially, duplication of the equipment and potentially double the cost to the project. Have you guys considered, or has there been any discussion of phase 3 being actually sponsored directly by vendors, i.e., providing an end-to-end test platform that will drive the adoption, that will generate the demos, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, it's still be hosted wherever it's going to be hosted, but at least that will be, some of the costs will be alleviated to the project. Just a thought. I don't know if that has.
I know, Jan, we talked about at one point that the bill of materials would be a let's put down what it is to purchase this, and then if a vendor decides to donate equipment that's on that BOM, then we'll spend less money. As long as there were some problems with some vendors wanting to donate equipment and then limit the use of that equipment. And I think the way around that was, okay, we'll just purchase the equipment, and if a vendor wants to donate it for open use, we'll accept it.
I mean, if somebody donates and has limited access, you can donate it for automation and not for manual. And for manual, we purchase it. Basically, the other way around than was said before. But basically, same cost in the end.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that's something that I think we should raise and discuss, but maybe that's part of the BOM discussion. This kind of occurred to me when I looked at it in one, on one page, all these 3 phases. This is the first time I saw it in the package that way. So,
well, on the other hand, if we're successful, then the sum of the automation and the manual access ought match the equipment. So in other words, we can start both of them small and grow both of them as needed. And if you have enough automated tests to be run and enough manual access, then you're not overspending. You're spending what you need to support the community and the development and the evangelism, for lack of a better word, that the lab is supposed to provide. So I mean, I think we let that set of discussions, they're all good points. I think we let that set of discussions come out when we present this to the board, and we'll let the board decide. if they want, if the board wants to go back to the member companies, i.e. to itself, and say, hey, we would like supplemental equipment, donation. That, so it's a good
I think,
point. Let's let
Joe,
that work. Let's let that work
Yeah.
itself. Go ahead, Jan.
No, just sorry to speak out of turn, but yeah, I think I like your justification much more than, hey, we got to double, the budget for the servers. It's the sum of all components that give us the result, and using that as a justification totally takes away from the derogatory meaning of like, oh, we need double the budget on our servers. So maybe that's just the verbiage that needs to go in there. But I think that certainly would help with the approvals and decision making as it goes to the board. So
Yeah.
I think you nailed it.
Okay, so let's write that in kind of the general text here about the partitioning. So let's add a note on the to cover those points in the defined partitioning. Just write a few sentences. Reach out to me offline, and I can help you craft that over beginning of next week. And again, we can do a short review again, both by the pull request review and then again in this call, right? Because the next biggest thing for us to define is this for the TSC is to get the lab effort squared away. Okay, so let's go to the property section.
Yeah, properties just talks about reliability, neutrality, and security as properties of the lab.
Right.
And we had basically for consideration, which we'll have to do basically and document how to replicate the lab. If people wants to do this privately in their own lab, each company, they should have the documentation ability to actually do this. How easy will be to use. Like we talked about the separation, and we chose to be physical, basically the two partitions. And we have the requirements. We have the access. The access, we go with this proposal to have two partitions. So that's the access. We want a backup, whatever is important. Capacity, and this will tie into the budget. Basically, we can start first with maybe one server and one DPU for manual access or whatever is there. And, if requirement is there, probably we can increase the amount of hardware we have. And then there are some bullet points on the process about notices, firmware upgrades, hosting, sufficient budget, lab updates, and everything. There is no change here from last meeting. This is why I'm going so fast through.
Yeah. This is fine. On this point, on this section, do we have anything that talks about what we want member company personnel to administer or run, other than the work, the work itself, versus what we want the hosting organization to own and run? In other words, do we have a sense of what the division of labor is based on prior experience with, either SNIA or UHIOL or other hosting facilities? Is the question clear?
No. Yes, but no. There is nothing of the ownership division in here.
Okay.
It's just about it needs to be done, but who's gonna do it is not yet
right
defined.
And do we? Okay, so this is open to everyone. Does this particular document need a discussion about the administrative responsibilities partitioning, or do we need to sit down and get approval to go talk to, say, UNHIOL and SNEA lab in a serious way? Like, yes, we can spend the money. Yes, we can go make decisions, and then we go have that discussion with them, and then we write up, hey, here's, after the discussion with them, here's how we're going to partition the work. Any
I
thoughts
think-
on that? You guys have a
I
lot
think
of
we need to allow some subgroup here to go talk to different providers and get costs and come back so that it can be added to the bill of materials.
right. And okay, so I think we can authorize those preliminary discussions. We had some with UNHIOL at least maybe 6 months ago.
Yes,
But Sridhar, I think we can authorize this lab subgroup to go have discussions on behalf of OPI in terms of exploring the administrative setup and
Yes.
the costs and so on, right? We don't need any
Yes.
further approval for that. We can just
Nope.
say, yeah, make it so, right?
Nope, you can go ahead and discuss with any vendor.
All right, so Marcia, can you guys in the lab subgroup and take, whoever else wants to participate and open conversation with the top couple or three hosting? And again, the only two that I have any familiarity with is UNHIOL and SNEA can also do this kind of hosting. And since SNEA is also interested in DPUs and has a technical work, a proto-technical working group, a task force on this, there could be some useful discussion there. I have all the SNEA contacts, and at some point we had the UNHIOL contacts. I'd have to look in my email, but we can get those together from this team. And are there any other labs anyone knows about that could potentially do this kind of hosting for us?
Venkat had a name
Okay.
that he knew of, another lab.
All right. Well, let's start
Quick
then.
question.
Yeah.
I have a question. When we open the discussion, are we going to focus on phase one, or we want to get a full view from
We
them?
we need the full view, and we need them to basically tell us if the phasing will work the way we want it, or how it will work, because we know it can work. And then basically break down the costs sort of according to the phases. In other words, to support phase one, it would take X. Support 1 and 2, it would take X plus Y. To support 1, 2, and 3, it takes X plus Y plus Z. And there's probably some scale dependence in there as well, right? So from the BOM discussion, we'll figure out what the initial scale is. And it could be pretty small, and then if we're successful, it could grow to, I would say, moderate size. I don't think we'll ever be very large for this. I would be extremely surprised if we're ever get above kind of a medium size, but and anyway, so let's start talking to the labs. You can include me in that, or you and Venkat can do it. Take Stephen with you. Anyone else who has experience with these external labs, basically we can organize, get that organized and get that rolling. And yeah, show them the whole plan. Tell them what we want, and that may drive fleshing out the plan some more and so on.
Yep.
Any other thoughts on that? Does that make sense? I'm gonna. How do I pronounce your name? Because I don't want to butcher it.
Mircha?
Mircha. Okay. So Mircha.
Yes.
Okay. So any other comments on this from anyone? All right, so let's start the lab discussion. So let's go look at the BOM now and start the lab discussions. And again, we can refine the document before we get the voted on approved thing. We can do some refinement. I would like to vote on this document in 2 weeks. The BOM we don't have to vote on because that really needs to go to the board. And I don't think we need a vote for that. We just need to say, hey, here's the rough shape of things, because the final cost will change as we do it. And then I want to have a notes on the possible lab space providers and lab administration providers, what the trade-offs are, so we can then make a recommendation as this group to the board. But I think this policies document we should vote on in 2 weeks. So if you want to add comments or reviews, and then Mircea, reach out to me on getting the some extra text added and so on. I can help with that.
Yeah. I took the notes.
Yeah. But I'm saying you just kick me in the shins for that one. Okay.
Sure.
Let's go through the BOM.
Okay, for the BOM, so this is based on the PR for lab spending guideline. So basically, I copy pasted that, and then I start adding equipment based on the categories in that PR. The feedback that I'm looking for, it's if we need any other extra column added. I got some good feedback here to look at OpenDCIM to see what they have in there and see if I missed anything. Of course, budget, if we are kind of in the ballpark, we can go higher, lower, and so on. List of DPUs, I was not able to find of the actual devices that will gonna support OPI. So we can put them in the BOM. This we got some feedback if we should have one server that hosts all the DPUs or each DPU with its own server. So it's also some hardware isolation, of course, cost it's implied here. And then for all this hardware, are we gonna self-service it, or are we just gonna buy 1, 3, 5 year support, whatever, 24/7, and we don't care about it? There was some feedback about that also, to get the support, but we don't need 24/7. The cheapest will be good, but probably we still want 3 or 5 year at least warranty on that, extended warranty. So now when we go and we look at the BOM itself, this could be provided by whoever provides the lab, but just in case I put here for post-rack, you need the rack to install the device first. Prices, I do not have quotes. Once we agree on it, I can go and actually get real quotes to get the prices, but I put, estimate price based on search on Google how much it costs and so on. You can find them as high as 2,000-3,000. You can find them as low as 200. I put DPUs. This is where I need the list. I just came. I looked who are the members, or at least the members listed with a big logo, and then I look on their pages, kind of which seems to be their top and newest DPUs, and I put it here. I hope I'm not offending anybody with this list. I need this list. Which are the DPUs we want to put in the lab? And price, I just put a rough estimate. I mean, again, I don't want members to be offended that one costs 3,000, one 5,000, and so on. I just put a rough, price.
Yeah. So on this point, I think we would be. So we need feedback from Marvell on this for. Okay. So so we need the member company feedback on whether this is the right list. For AMD Pensando, it is. I know it would be. For NVIDIA, I would say there's maybe not a lot of point in Bluefield 2 for the lab, but maybe there is. I don't know. Oren, if you have an opinion on that one. And then, anyway, we can work that. So good point. good to include the whole list.
Yeah, and I would hear a comment.
We'll take, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, good to include the whole list. Let's take this offline to refine this.
Yes, so this is one category. I put already here 2, considering the manual automation thing. You know, if we are to start with only one, I can break it down for phases and say we need only one for phase 1, and on phase 3 we need another one, or something like this.
Right.
So this is on the DPUs. Then these DPUs needs to be hosted in the servers, and I have here basically 2 proposals. Either let's say a server that it's able to host 8 DPUs at once, or you need 1 server for each DPU, and then you know it's cheaper each server, but you need more of them. So the difference in price. The feedback was to go 1 server per DPU. That will be my feedback as well. Actually, I tried this in my own lab, and it ended up a disaster.
Yeah.
When 2 people, 3 people start going using in there, and one starts rebooting, the other one loses his work. Yeah, it didn't went well.
Yeah,
This one.
so again, a high power PCIe box is good for certain use cases, but not good for development. I completely agree with that. We need at most 2 DPUs on a host, but typically it would be 1.
Yeah, this server has 2 PCIe X16 4.0 PCIe slots, so we could go to 2 in a server if we want. This one, and we can have some with PCIe 5.0. That was also an option if that is a requirement.
Yeah, I would start with 1 per and then expand to 2 in a couple of servers for dual DPU use case and testing, but I would not start there. I would say that would be a lab expansion if and as we need it.
Yeah, that was my suggestion as well.
Yeah, okay, so I'll keep this one. And the other one was to have basically a server which, let's say, cost more, where we can start VMs, have software installed, do all kind of things. Basically, that will host all the test apps, scripts, VMs, containers. I don't know, whatever the community needs to run, there probably we need a server. And if we go KVM, ESXi, Docker, or a combination of both KVM and Docker, or ESXi with VMs and so on, that we can decide what we want to put on it. But so there is a server for the applications. Traffic generators, since this API, I just put a server here with 100 gig NICs, where we can use, I don't know, T-Rex or other software-based traffic generators to start with, especially for functional. I put 2 of those. Now, depending how many tests we want to run in parallel, we may need to increase this. And I put a line item for hardware traffic generator, but the price here, it's high. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, at least in the phase 1 for functional. This probably could be in performance or some other things later on.
Yeah, so network analyzers and traffic generators are notoriously expensive. But maybe we can cut a deal with maybe we can cut a deal with a member company on that or so on. So let's see what happens.
Yeah, but for now, I would say just start with this. It's buy 2 server with 2 NICs, put it in there, and start having the test and so on. And once we have the test and the critical mass, then we start worrying about, hey, we also need performance, we also need other things. But I think this should be good enough to get us going. And then some switches. In switch category, we need 2 things. We need like a top of the rack switch. And here I put two options. One it's one with like 25 gig links that is used usually in data center and so on. I don't think we need this. Or basically a 1 gig with a 10 gig uplink for management. This is again management of these DPUs, management of this. This is not test. Yeah. So my suggestion would be to go with 1 gig. What I give here as an example, because I had a quote, is that usually if we go into 3-5 year support, this becomes at a cost. And for example, we can see that for all these devices, this will apply. While you can spend, let's say, $13,000 for the device itself, if you go with a 5-year support, that's almost another 60% of the price increase just for having support for 5 years. And that was a decision which kind of I'm looking for as feedback. How much extended warranty and support we want to get for the hardware we buy here? We self-manage or we let whatever the vendor manage?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I'll give you my personal in the lab. I have a big lab. And because I have a big lab, if I'm buying 10 servers, I'm actually buying 11 servers, and I have one in the box. And if anything breaks, I just take it out of my own box and put it there, and I don't pay for this kind of things. I prefer to just buy another server. Or if I have, I don't know, 20 switches, I just buy 21 and I deal with it myself. But, that's me. Others prefer something else. So
Yeah,
this is why I'm
that was
looking for
my
feedback.
comment about, that's how I used to do it as well when I ran large labs. My comment about is in order to lower the cost, just do Nick's business, the lowest level of support that we can get from a vendor for part support. Nick's business day 512. None of this is important enough and it's not critical enough to get 4-hour support, 4-hour part replacement.
That part I understood and I agree. So that part I understood and I agree. Well, the question remaining, do we still want to get an extended warranty? Do we still want to get a 3-year warranty, a 5-year warranty, or we just stay with the 1-year standard product warranty and not deal with line items like this?
Just because of the way the budget's going to work and the money that's going to come in year after year, I say we don't get advanced long-term support. Keep it as short as we can and purchase that support in a future budget cycle if needed. Because I don't think we're going to be purchasing this large amount of equipment every year, but the receipts that we're bringing in as a project are going to be the same every year. Does that make sense? So spread the cost across multiple years would be my preference.
Okay.
And anybody disagree with that?
I think I'm agreeing, Paul. So you're saying fail in place replacement at the minimal cost per calendar year or per fiscal year.
Yeah, well, and usually you can't buy just a 1-year support. It's usually a 3-year support. And then in 3 years, we'll have another budget cycle with more money. And if we want to re-up for an additional 2 or 3 years, we do it then.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The only comment I have on that from, kind of my background is that do you want to invest in what we would call an infrastructure? So the items that will have to be there and you'll build, and design your test suites and, whatever other kind of layered software that's going to go on top. So it will assume that this is indeed a Juniper, another Cisco, you know what I mean? Switches, et cetera, or it's a Arista switch, and certain things you don't want to change, and if it fails, it's critical. So I don't want to say that you're wrong. I think you're right, but we may want to exclude a couple of items purposely. That's all I'm going to say.
Got it. I understand that.
Yeah, and the example here was with the top of the rack switch, because if this one dies, you lost the access to the whole devices in the lab.
Mhm.
While
Yeah,
if
yeah.
the server for DPU, this one or whatever, this one dies, whatever, just this small portion die comparing with losing the whole lab.
Now we're on the same page, I think. Good, thank you.
Okay. Then I had a question. Are we expecting soon, because by this gets approved and so on, time passed, to go into 400 gig, and we need to have anything 400 gig related in here? Okay, just to think about. And the other one, it's
in my opinion, not this year, but it will be coming. But again, this will have to be an incremental build out. So I think 400 gig in the future, will matter. Again, everyone's roadmap has it with switches as well. Switches already have it. So I would say future, because again, the DPUs you've listed don't need it.
correct.
Okay.
And the other one, it's a switch or a layer 1 switch even, to make the connectivity between the server with the NICs that are generating the traffic to the DPUs, because what we have, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, my map, 10, 14, whatever DPUs in total, we have only 2 test servers, at least in this budget. So we'll need to have the ability to take via software, via code, these 2 ports, map it to this, run the test, these 2 ports, map it to this, run test, these 2 ports, and so on. So I put here a switch, a 64 port switch. I look for some layer 1 devices, they're expensive. With a switch with, sorry, I'm moving, a switch with just VLAN and so on, maybe a better option. A 64 port, 100 gig, high packet rate switch could serve the purpose to link the traffic generator to the DPUs.
No, okay, so we definitely need a switch. We probably need 2 switches if we're going to do any reasonable test. So it's 2 switches, and all of the DPUs are connected to those switches. And again, the servers may also need ordinary NICs that are also connected to those switches. And that gives us the ability to do, kind of any combination of traffic and testing. Because again, loading stuff on the DPU itself and having it run is fine. But how do I know my P4 pipeline worked correctly? If I have a DPU on each end and I want to test some P4 pipeline, they need to talk to each other, right? And that has to happen through a switch. A patch, automated patch panel or layer 1 switch is not ideal. You want a packet switch, and then again, whether using VLANs or not. I mean, for this setup, we don't necessarily need to even use VLANs. It's all just an IP subnet, and you configure the address of the guy you're talking to, and you're all set. But anyway, we definitely need switches, and then the vendors for all of these things. And I don't think we need. So why would we need Arista plus Juniper?
No. This is those are 2 solutions for top of the rack switch, and I put multiple names here so nobody feels offended and left out. Okay, in the end we'll select one, and we're not gonna make buy 3 devices from 3 different people probably, or whatever makes sense. I just put just to have multiple here, and those are for top of the rack 2 options. One like a high speed 25 gigs that I don't think we need, but because I had this code already, it was exemplifying the support price in report with the device, and then we'll go with the 1 gig.
The 1 gig just for management, and again, we have multiple, and we have more vendors than even what you have listed here there's, 2 or 3 more viable
Yes, yeah.
vendors. And the same thing is true on the servers. So let's make a point in the BOM. If you have an intro paragraph to the BOM, I would write that out.
It was after this, and we're gonna discuss about this. How do we select the vendor and so on? So, yeah.
No, what I would write
I
is
see.
that the BOM list. What I would write explicitly is that the BOM listing vendors are for illustration only, and not the direct proposal. It's basically saying, here's representative switches and what they cost, and I have no problem with the representative switches and what they cost and other components and what they cost. But this is for estimate purposes and doesn't reflect any decision on
No vendor selection was
Yeah,
made. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
put
would make that very explicit at the top
Okay.
at the very top, a disclaimer. Say, put a disclaimer, put a bold tag on it, and let's write a disclaimer paragraph. Because what I would hate to have happen is somebody read that and get confused or bent out of shape, even worse, about it.
Yeah.
And we all understand it, but again, these are somewhat public. These are public documents, and I just don't want any.
I know. Yes.
I don't want
Some
any,
to get
I
upset.
don't want any mess. Okay. And then there were some comments in chat. So let's go through those. So we have the UNHIOL contact, which is good. I'll put that in the notes. The SNIA lab program, and again, I know all those people like directly, and I think some of you, others of you do as well. I've worked with SNIA for 20 years. And then Kyle says the lab proposal should use the main OPI repo and be part of the policy folder, and I agree with that. So we should move the lab proposal and the BOM into the policy folder at some point. We can get it all settled before we do that, or we could move it. The next revision could move it there. And then I agree, Stephen. We need a DPU IPU vendor feedback on the requirements for the cards. The requirements for the cards vary widely, as we all know, from our own practical experience. And so we need to make sure that we're getting servers that can handle the cards that are going in the lab.
Yes, that's my experience as well. And the servers the servers that host, let's say, one DPU may be different part numbers than the servers that host another one, just from compatibility list. And the other one on servers, what I noticed mostly is that we actually need one that is able to support a GPU, because I saw at least half of these DPUs require another power pin adapter that normal servers don't have, that just hanging unless they have support for actually plugging a GPU in there. So yes, I'll actually make even a note of this, that in the end we may end up with 3-4 different servers to support each DPU.
All right, cool. All right, let's keep going. We got 5 minutes left.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. And then we have network control PDU, so you can from home get in and basically cold boot a device after a firmware update, or if it's crashing or something. We have KVMs to be able to connect to the servers. Usually they have IPMI and so on the servers, but I found useful to have ability to remotely have a KVM keyboard, video, and mouse basically over IP that we can attach. The other one, serial connectivity, especially for the switches and so on. So a terminal server, 48 ports of serial that we can have. Of course, cables, I'll add also the 1 gig and so on, but those are lower cost, but mostly the 100 gig. I went with some 3-meter DAC cables. These are, let's say, lower price. If we go into actual fiber, that's, let's say, more expensive. And I don't think the purpose of OPI is actually to test, transport medium. So we
It's
can
not.
go with whatever is the cheapest.
That's right.
And since everything is in the same rack, 3-meter DAX should be more than enough. And of course, if it makes sense, we can get 1 meter, half meter, and so on if they're close to each other. And if we go with ESXi instead of KVM, since there was this I added it just because there was a category in spending about licenses. So I gave an example of a possible license. Personally, I would go probably with Docker and KVM. But if anybody wants to go this route, or we need this for testing because of different other projects, we may need to purchase a ESXi license. Other things to consider, but I didn't put them in BOM. I think it needs another table. It is how many rack units each device takes, because that will help with the actual deployment. And when we talk with UNH and so on, we tell them, hey, we need a 40 U space, or we need 20 U space, or whatever. The other one is how much power each device takes. And of course, from power, you can kind of roughly calculate the HVAC needs for it. But these are lab deployment things, not necessarily BOM. First, you need to know what you want to buy. And then once we know what we buy, we can research this data for them. Selection criteria I put here for vendors. Features of each device, of course, if they offer warranty and not support. End of life, like I wouldn't buy a device if it's already announced end of life next year or something, and then it runs out of support and so on. API availability I put here to be able to programmatically, let's say, control the network DPU and so on, and the regression can go and cold boot a device if it's not responding for half an hour and so on. So API integration with lab management tools, and I don't know if we want to have something, even OpenDCIM, yeah, let's say. You want to have support for those. Of course, availability, it's a big one. You cannot buy it, what's good for it. And of course, price. I don't know if I didn't put a weight, how much each weighs, but kind of this bullet. I don't know if it's anything else that we want to consider in the vendor selection criteria for and device, actually.
Excellent.
And then when we talk a server and devices in general, I think will be good under the table to have a section where we actually give the spec and so on, because without the spec doesn't quite what's happening there. So I gave an example of a server config where we specify CPU, memory, storage, and warranty and things of this sort. Made some comments about, I already said that GPU focus servers may be more appropriate for one. There was a note in there to get pedestal servers. Being a lab and the rack, I see why this will work, because you can plug, like I said, GPUs, you have power supply and so on. But why would we need pedestal servers if we can get that in rack mountable servers?
And Keith had a comment, and we're just at time now. So we'll pick this up next time and continue the BOM discussion.
Just quickly,
yeah.
So just two things. One is the I don't see like a storage server having basically serve a bunch of storage bays, right? Put it in hard drives so you can dynamically provision like storage, right? I think it'd be useful. The other thing, pedestal servers, I guess it completely depends on form factor. If we all agree that all the cards are fits in a standard, say 1U or 2U chassis, then there's not a need. But if there's a need for it because of form factor issues, right? You need something more than 2U. Then something like a pedestal server, which is like 4U, is that's my comment.
Okay, got it. Okay, so let's expand that discussion on the pedestal server, Keith, if you don't mind, and we'll pick up the BOM discussion next time. I'll put a note that
So anyway, so a lot of feedback needed in all the categories. So
yeah,
please don't be shy. And
so we'll pick up the BOM discussion again next time and go from there. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Right.